Public comment? I'd like to come back just briefly to the original staff report and ask some questions about wells 3 and 4. Have they been rehabilitated, or have they not been able to be rehabilitated?
They have been rehabilitated to the extent that it was possible to. And I'm saying that mostly regarding well 4. The casing, when the drilling company that was cleaning the casing to try to resolve the issue with turbidity in that well, which is why we had to take it offline, when they went in there to clean the casing to open up the slots.
Perkins?
Lorraine and Lorraine.
That's
well
number
4 is Lorraine and
Okay,
Lorraine.
excuse me.
What they said was that they found that the casing was so thin that they needed to take extra time to be extremely careful in how they clean those slots, but because they were concerned that if they cleaned them too aggressively, that they would create problems.
So it's kind of rickety.
Yeah.
But you said that we've had an aggressive rehabilitation program. It seems like a contradiction.
Well, what I mean by that is that we have done as much as we can do. We've gone through and we've cleaned the wells and we've TV'd them, and we've taken all steps that we can to try to get the most out of the existing wells that we could.
Okay. Let's go hypothetical. The lake goes dry. The Rainy is sucking air, and we only have well 3 and 4. Radical conservation gets us through the dry season on well 3 and 4?
No. It wouldn't. I mean, it's not going to. It depends on what you mean by that. In terms of public health and safety, maybe. In terms of additional water beyond that, no.
What do you mean additional water beyond that?
Well, those wells produce somewhere between 1.5 to 1.7 million gallons per day. Our summertime water use is 5 to 6 million gallons a day. So all of that additional water goes for irrigation.
And if the Rainy is not producing, the well adjacent to the Rainy or close to the Rainy would start producing?
No.
It's off. It's not used. It's closed down.
Right. If there's no water in the Russian River, there's not going to be any water. In all likelihood, I don't know this for a fact. We've never been in this situation, but in all likelihood, if there's no water in the river, there's going to be very little, if any, water in the Rainy collector. There's not going to be any water in 5. And well 3...
That's the one that's by the baseball field?
Right. Well, that's the one next to the Rainy is well 5. And then well 3 is so close to the river that in all likelihood it's also going to be affected. Now, I'm not expecting it not to produce anything, but I would expect the production to be reduced. By how much, I don't know.
Also on the second page of the staff report, it says that the need to be addressed with the new wells. Wells is plural. Is the assumption that we are going to drill this well and then immediately start drilling another well?
Well, what we'd like to be able to do, which is I've spoke to this before, I think, is that once we could secure a reliable source, we would want to ideally be able to go to the well 4 site and put in a well with a new casing at that site, because the casing is old and it's sort of not known exactly how long that casing is going to hold up. But there's no reason to believe that we couldn't drill adjacent to that well and put in a new casing.
Okay, so we can't survive on well 3 and 4.
We can. I believe that we would have enough water for public health and safety, and perhaps fire. Anything beyond that, no, we wouldn't.
Further.
Wouldn't that put an extra strain on those 2 old wells as well?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, there's no. That's absolutely the case.
Councilmember Landis.
I want to bring up another issue. When I was out doing site visits and looking at the location that we're describing and listening to Mel Grandy about the movement of the substation to across the street to a portion of this property where the well is going to be located, I really got to see where that is in relationship to, you know, just looking at it, seeing that that's going to be developed there. And it made me start to think about the land that's left after the substation moves over and we put a well there. How do we retain as much value as possible in that land in terms of the placement of the well, so that the well doesn't use up space that could be useful for some other purpose, or that might interfere with the sale of that property for some other purpose? So I think that's something I'd like to hear more discussion about.
We're pushing the well back off of Goby Street, so there would be an easement to get the connection through the front of it, so that it would be encumbered, but that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be a place for a parking lot or something like that. So though it would lessen the value, but the well's going to be pushed back to the south of the property.
Toward where the old agricultural well is?
That direction.
Okay.
So our view is that the well is pushed back, though it might impact some sort of building. That front area that's actually on Goby Street proper would be able to be used for a parking lot or something like that. We'd have an easement across it if we'd ever need to dig into it. They couldn't put a building on it, but
Could not put a building on it.
not over the pipes. But they, you know, typically the parking lots that would be a place for a parking lot, depending on how the.
Councilmember Crane.
In reviewing the drawings, there's a pretty good sized water main in Goby and a somewhat smaller, what is it, an 8 in Orchard, south of Goby.
Yes, I believe that's right.
If the well were sited along the south parcel line and near Orchard, then we wouldn't encumber the Goby Street frontage at all. And based upon the preliminary drawings we've seen for the substation, it seems that there's room there to do it. Has that been discussed with electrical staff as a possibility?
No, it hasn't been. And the reason it hasn't been is that you need to be at least 1,000 feet away from well 4 not to influence it. And the further you are away from that well, the better off you are. So in an effort to maximize the production capacity or the potential production capacity of this well and to minimize its effect on well 4, the best place to drill on that property would be the northwest corner of that. Now, you have to be 50 feet away. The regulations require that a water well has to be at least 50 feet away from a sewer main. So ideally, the best place to site a well on that property in order to get it as far away from well 4 as you can and to meet the other requirements is to be in that northwest corner, 50 feet away from Goby, essentially. And then you can move it as close as you want to, I mean, within reason, in order to be able to drill to that property line. You don't have to be out into the parcel. You can be up against there. And as in reviewing the drawings, there is already a 20-foot right-of-way that's already been set aside along that line. So what we're basically talking about is putting a well in a right-of-way that's already there anyway. And all that we would need to do would be to put a well building there in order to house the equipment that we need. But the impact, I mean, I think would be fairly minimal. And, in terms of a permanent structure, the architecture of that structure